Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. It's Vesna here. Thank you so much for stopping by. For today's video, I am bringing to you 14 of my best Easter DIYs according to you guys, basically what you like the most. So please enjoy. So I saw this truck on the Kirkland's website and I thought it was really cute. It was about 15 bucks, I think. Regardless, we don't have a Kirkland's here, so to have it delivered to Canada and shipped and all of that stuff, even if I'm not even sure if they do shipping, but it would be quite expensive. So I thought, well, this sign would just do the trick. So the sign is from the Dollar Tree, and I'm just taking it apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand off the glitter, and I'm going to cut off the carrots and the bunny's butt. And then I'm going to wind up reusing everything. I'm just going to do it a little bit differently. I don't love that the paper ripped off the carrots, but I'll just wind up repainting them and cutting them out to look like a better shaped carrot. And I'm just using an X-Acto knife for all of this, and then I'm sanding and kind of cutting down all the parts that are loose and not looking the best. And like I said, I'll be reusing everything. I may wind up, when I was doing this, I thought I was going to wind up using all of the carrots, but I don't wind up using all of them, but I do save them for different projects just in case, because I always do that. So once I clean everything up, it's time to paint it. So I sand down a little bit more of the Happy Easter and the tires just to get the glitter off so I can paint over it. I wind up painting black over top of the tires and this Paradise Blue for the truck. So I'm keeping it pretty much blue like it was before. I'm just giving it a little bit more depth and color and kind of getting rid of the shininess because I really don't like the glitter. So just do a light coat over top of the truck in the blue, and then I wind up coloring the entire tire in black. Once the truck is all painted, I add some of the white acrylic paint just around the edges and the tires and kind of where the door would be. And I'm doing this because I want it, like I said, to have a little bit of more character than it did before and to look more farmhousey, rustic type of look to it. Once that's done, I go ahead and fix up the carrots and just touch up the bunny's butt. For the carrots, I'm adding this pumpkin orange, and I'm using it with a brush that has a little bit of brown on it. that I didn't wash. So it gives it more of a darker kind of orange, not such a bright orange look, but more like a rustic aged orange or a burnt orange. And I'm just doing the paint over top of these carrots. And then I use the leaf green for the top and for the bunnies, but I'm just painting it over with some white acrylic paint. Again, just to get rid of so much of that shininess and just to kind of mute some of the pink so it's not so in your face shiny and bright. Once that's all dry and ready to go, I attach my carrots to the pickup truck. I just hot glue them at the back, and I just dry brush a little bit of black over top of the truck and then wipe it off with a wet wipe. And this is just to give that truck a more of a dirty kind of rustic feel to it. I like the way it looked just blue, but I thought it was a little bit too new looking, so I thought the black would add a little bit more. I'm using my new glue gun, which I talked about in my previous video, which I can link here, and it's working really well. And I'm just using that to hot glue the carrots, and then I hot glue the bunny's bum at the end. And then I decided that instead, the Kirkland's dupe that I saw was it standing on its own, but I had done something like that with another spring DIY that I did. So this one I wanted it to hang on one of my doors. When you come into my house, I have two doors. One is to the bathroom, one is to the outside, so I wanted it on the bathroom door. So I just attached some jute rope to the back. So that's all there is to this guy. Really easy to do, very inexpensive. It cost me $1.25 because I am in Canada and these things are $1.25 at the Dollar Tree, not $1. And here's the dupe. I think I nailed it. Like I said, it was a stand on its own, but I wanted it as a plaque, so that's the only difference. If you wanted to have this exact replica, you could easily use a paint stir stick at the bottom, paint it black, and attach this guy to that. But here it is, completed. Love the way it turned out. So this is a super easy one. I'm taking this package of eggs from the Dollar Tree, and it's a package of 6 eggs. I'm going to dump these eggs, and I'm going to spray paint the carton in just a black spray paint that I have on hand. I'm not going to record myself spray painting it, but just any old black paint will do. Then once it's spray painted, I just add a little bit of the cashmere tan acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree around. I just dry brush it lightly, and I glue in the eggs back and wait for it to all dry. Once all of that's done, I cut these little strips just from black construction paper, and I'm going to be having that as my banner around the eggs. And I'll use my Cricut to write in farm fresh eggs, 25 cents. And then I will be hot gluing that to the container as well, and I'll be adding some deer moss as well. And I just use the Cricut font, and for the Farm Fresh, I did about 1/2 inch tall, and then for the eggs, I did about 0.6 tall, just a little bit bigger than the Farm Fresh, and the strips were about 1 inch wide, and just long enough to cover the container. And I was really excited because I used the vinyl from the Dollar Tree. They finally got Cricut supplies. I was so excited to see them there. And I used the permanent white vinyl, and it worked just fine. I did not use the transfer paper because I already had a pack going of the transfer paper from Amazon, so I will be using that next time. But this worked really well, and it looks fine. And it looks great. It cut really nicely. I just used the vinyl setting. It didn't rip, and it was a nice small font, and it did a really great job, so I'm happy with it. And you can't beat the deal. I then used this glue gun to glue down the moss as well as the Farm Fresh. And I just wanted it to look like it was wrapped around, so I just glued it at the sides, and I did this for both, and then I just added moss in between, and that's all there is to this project. Really easy. It cost $1.25. I guess if you included the vinyl too, so $2.50. I'm in Canada, so everything is $1.25 at the Dollar Tree, although they've just raised prices to $1.50, which makes me a little bit sad for some things, but oh well. So really inexpensive to do, just need a little bit of paint and this egg carton container, and then you could even write these in if you didn't have a Cricut. I just wanted to use my new vinyl. And here it is, all completed. Love the way it turned out. I will be using it in my tray. And then for this DIY, I will be creating a little decoration, like a little egg basket decoration, using this sign from the Dollar Tree and a crate from the Dollar Tree. So what I'm doing is I'm taking apart the bunny. I am using an X-Acto knife to cut everything off. I'm cutting the head off, the arms off, and then I'll be reusing everything. Now, I tried using the X-Acto knife to cut on an angle, but it was a little bit too hard because I couldn't see from the back where to cut, and I couldn't push all the way through. I was afraid I'd break the knife. I already broke one. So I tried using the miter shears, which helped me get going, and then I just decided, you know what, I'll just cut it off straight up at the top, and then I'll just cut the little triangles out. So that's probably the easiest way. Maybe you have other tools that you can use that make it a little bit easier, but this is what I found to be the best for me with, limited amount of tools. So once that's all cut, I sand everything down just to get it to look nice and even, and then I sand off the Easter glitter as well as from the ears just to kind of make painting the ears a little bit easier, and then to make that Easter not be so shiny because I don't like the shiny look. I also wind up, after I sand everything down, I wind up painting over top of the Easter, just kind of dry brushing some white, which I'll show you. And then I do the wipe on wipe off thing that I always do with baby wipes, just to have it look a little bit more rustic. And for the paint, I am using the Rust-Oleum Chalk Linen White. I've said this in previous videos, I like to buy the big tub of it, the big paint can of it, and then it lasts me for a long time for a lot of projects. I've been doing YouTube videos for about a year, and I've been using that Rust-Oleum Chalk Linen White probably close to a year now, and this is my second paint can. But that being said, I painted 2 fireplaces with the first one, as well as a whole bunch of furniture. So it goes a really long way. It's a very good value. I paint the head in the white as well. And then I didn't bother with sanding down the nose. I was okay with it showing through a little bit because I'm going to be covering it with some burlap. So if you're ever wondering why there's like different projects that wind up kind of being in the camera view when I'm doing these, is because as they're drying, I might be doing projects for a different video. I try to craft either when my kids are sleeping, or I'll take like a Saturday morning and that'll be kind of mom time, where for about an hour or two I just craft, and it's great therapy for me, and it's a great way for me to get these things that I've wanted to get done. But that's why sometimes you'll see different crafts that I haven't been using in my video, like those carrots, which will be for a video on Tuesday. So just kind of so you have an idea of why. It's not that I'm that messy, it's just that I'm kind of doing a whole bunch of stuff at once. And sometimes like I said, I'll be reusing it, and I put it in so I can see it, and I forget to just move it over so you guys don't see it in the camera, but I have to have it like within hand, within reach, because I'll forget about it. And so then what I'm doing with the bunny's head, which you see me doing here, is I'm actually just dry brushing some brown and some, well, sorry, some of the cashmere and some black to make him look really aged and rustic. I just make a little triangle with the burlap and then I stick it on the bunny. I wind up doing two burlaps just to make it a little bit raised, and then I draw in the eyes with a pencil first and then with a Sharpie hot glue everything down. And then I wind up putting everything together. I did forget to put the whiskers on. I remember after, but for the whiskers I used some twine just to make them be a little bit curly, and I just measured so that they were all the same. And then to make him be like a little basket for eggs, I attach this crate from the Dollar Tree. It's the smaller one. They have two, ones that have handles, ones that don't. This is the smaller version. And what I'm doing is just kind of trying to figure out how I'm going to set this guy in. I wind up giving the crate some legs, and then I also glue a little bit at the bottom of the head to make it a little bit raised. I thought I could get away without doing this, but he didn't look right, and then I was afraid it wouldn't stand if I did it any other way, so this is what I wound up doing. For the legs, I'm using just the tumble blocks, 4 of them. I'm going to paint them in white and hot glue them to the bottom of the crate. I'll also paint the sides of the crate in white, so because you wind up seeing that. And then I just kind of assemble everything. Once everything is attached, I put the eggs. I'm using the small carton of eggs from the Dollar Tree again, the 6 eggs. And I put little sticks on them. And this is from skewers. I just cut them in half. And then I put floral foam in the bottom of the crate so that way the eggs can stay. I don't have to glue them or anything. I just kind of push them through and they're a little bit raised and it looks like the bunny is holding the eggs. And then I attach the arms and the feet also, which I showed you here. I attached the arms and the feet on to the front of the bunny so it looks like he's holding the basket of eggs in his lap. I also add some floral moss into the basket just to give it a little bit of a festive Eastery look. For the feet, I wound up using just the triangles that I cut out and then just cut them into a shape of kind of like a foot. And I hot glued everything to the bottom and just went over with white again to make sure everything is nice and covered. And that's all there is to this guy. So he was a little bit more involved, but not too much. And again, very inexpensive, you know, $3 total to make this guy. And he looks so cute. Because my front porch is not covered, I will be using this little sign on my indoor decor. So if you've watched my previous videos, I got the scrap piece of wood. I got a whole bunch of little scrap pieces of wood like this. So I'm going to use this for my sign. I sanded it just lightly on the sides so that I wouldn't get splinters. It's about 12 inches long. And I'm going to be painting it white in the Rust-Oleum chalked linen white. I do like to do my signs double-sided, so I don't paint the other side until I figure out what I'm using it for. So I might use it at Christmas time or in the summertime. It just really depends. But I do like to reuse them, and that kind of saves on how much stuff I have. As well as if I've purchased them, it kind of saves on money as well. This is going to be a really simple sign. I'm going to just paint it out. I'm going to use my Cricut to cut out the words bunny trail as well as an arrow. Now I'm using the lemon font for the words, and then I'm just using a simple arrow. And I am going to cut it out on some stencil vinyl, and then I will just dab on some black acrylic paint. So I'm going to speed up the video a little bit just because you don't need to watch that in detail, but just so you know the materials and steps I'm doing. So just before I stencil in the words, I am actually just going to distress the sign as well using that black acrylic paint, and I do this by just dry brushing the edges a little bit darker and then lightly dry brushing the middle of the sign. So I'm not very good at using fine tip brushes to correct any kind of paint that needs to be corrected. So usually I just wind up using a Sharpie. So for this, I'm just using a black Sharpie to fix that R a little bit. So here's the finished product. I think it looks really, really cute. It's gonna go great in my Easter decor. The first DIY, I'm using these plaques that I got from Dollarama. They came in a package of, I believe, 6. And I wind up just using one of the plaques, and I'm cutting it in half. And then I'm using one of the halves as a whole, and then I'm going to cut it again in half. I thought I was going to use my miter saw, but I wind up just kind of cutting it with my miter shears. And then I will be painting each of the plaques a different color. I'm using the Rust-Oleum Serenity chalked paint, cotton candy pink acrylic paint, and warm white acrylic paint. After I clean them up, I go ahead and I paint them. And then I use these wooden dowels, square wooden dowels, as my frame around, and I just cut them to size. I wind up staining each of the pieces of dowel in the Rust-Oleum glaze in Java. I love using this as a stain, and all I do is either I use a sponge or just a rag to put it on. Usually I'll do a sponge and then I wipe it off with a rag, which is what I've done here. Then I just hot glue all of these down to fit my frame. For these other two, I wound up having to kind of modify the frame parts a little bit because I ran out of the square dowels. I wouldn't have had enough to make all of them the same, so I wound up using just scrap pieces of wood that I cut into about the shape of the other square dowels. I should have bought 2 packs at Dollarama. Hopefully they have it next time I go because they're proving to be really, really good. I've gotten lots of use out of them. Once I glued the frames down, I wound up writing in Hoppy Easter, Hip and Hop on each of the different frames. Sometimes I use a pencil and then I go over top with a Sharpie, sometimes I don't. I'm still working on my kind of my Ray Dunn mock font. I don't always want to use my Cricuts, like especially for things that are this small. I tend to like to just write it in. So, practice makes perfect. If you just take your time, you wind up doing a good job on it. And here's what they looked like, all finished. I'm going to be displaying these in my tray, and I'll have that over on my home channel. So if you have some time, stop over on my home channel and check it out. The video will be out by probably middle of next week. And I'm really happy with they turned out. I think they're very cute and they'll go nicely in my little tray. For my next DIY, this is even simpler than the previous one. I'm just writing again in my Ray Dunn font carrots on this clay pot. The clay pot I bought at the Dollar Tree. It was a pack of 2 for $1.25. I'm in Canada. Well, actually, it might be $1.50 now. I'm in Canada, and our Dollar Tree is $1.25. Used to be. Now there's items that are $1.50 and items that are $1.25. So it just depends. I use my pencil and then I go over top of the pencil with a Sharpie, and then I'm going to put some moss into this pot. First I use the green moss at the bottom and then I cover it with some brown moss. You could use floral foam if you wanted to, and then just put a little bit of the brown moss on top to act like dirt. It's up to you. And then I'm putting one of those snowballs from Dollarama that you can get. I'm pretty sure you can get all year long, as the bunny's body, and I'm cutting some felt feet onto it, gluing it down, and I'm using a little piece of fur that I got from from Dollarama, and it was just left over, and I'm popping it on as the tail. And then I'm just adding some carrots that I picked up at the Dollar Tree as well into the pot and putting the body in, and that's all there is to this DIY. If you wanted to make sure that the body stayed, you could put a skewer into the snowball and then use the floral foam. Mine's going to go in a tray, no one's going to touch it, so I don't need to have it be in there secure or glued down or anything like that. And that's all there is to this DIY. I think it turned out really cute. Another item for my tray. This is another super easy DIY. I'm just taking some of these wood carrots from the Dollar Tree. They came in a pack of 8, and I am just hot gluing them together. I'm doing 3 of them. I did see Sandra from the Shoreman's Nest do this. I think she did about 6 of them with a bunny to make kind of a thick bunny, which was a really great idea, because even with these, then you can get a much bulkier decorative item for $1.25 versus like if you bought them at even like Dollarama or like Walmart or something, it would be at least $3 or $4. And then I'm just painting out the carrot in an orange color. So I paint both of these in the orange. One, I just do a lighter coat. I was originally thinking that I might glue them together to make a really thick carrot, but then I decided I was going to use this lighter colored one for my next project. So to continue on with my current project, once the fully covered orange one dried, I added the top to it. So for the top, I just used some leftover jute rope, and what I did was I glued it on, and then I took little individual, like each individual one, and I just separated them. And I just did enough of pieces just so it covered the top and it looked kind of like a an aged carrot. And then I went ahead and I aged the carrot by just lightly putting a little bit of black acrylic paint on it. And that's all there was to this one. So I wound up adding a little bit of distressing with some black acrylic paint, and here's what it came up to. This next DIY is a little bit more involved, but I was going to purchase some orange burlap. However, I could not find it anywhere except for on Amazon, but I found it kind of pricey. Even Michael's didn't have it. And unfortunately, we only have Michael's here and some of the dollar stores, and none of them had it. So I decided to make my own alcohol ink and dye just regular burlap. So I'm just eyeballing this. I'm putting just enough alcohol in to the paint so that it makes the paint a little bit smooth but not too liquidy. And then I am just mixing it all together, and I will just dip the burlap into it. The consistency of this was kind of like a thick, maybe like a milkshake or like buttermilk or something like that. Basically, if you add too much alcohol, rubbing alcohol, it'll dilute it a little bit too much so the color won't be so rich. But if you add a touch less, so I would just kind of start going little by little, and like you have to really do a good job mixing it so you can kind of see that it's thick at the bottom. So I just keep on mixing it until I get that consistency that I'm looking for. So because this was messy, I went to we have like a little workshop and a sink in there. So I went in there, but the lighting is really bad, so I didn't record it. I just dipped the burlap into there, and then I rinsed it off because when I dipped it, because it was so thick, when I dipped it, the little holes from the burlap got clogged with the paint. But then I rinsed it off, and it just gave me that nice, rich orange color that I was looking for. I did do a second batch where I diluted it a little bit more, but it didn't give me such a rich color, so the thicker paint is better. You could always just buy alcohol ink. I just didn't want to go to the store. Because I wanted strips, I just cut these into strips, and that's what I dyed. So here's what the pieces look like all dyed. So you can see some are a little bit darker and better than others. The best colored ones are the ones that I was telling you that it had a little bit of the thicker mixture. And so all I'm doing is taking that carrot that I had glued together and painted earlier in the video, and I'm just wrapping it around in the burlap, and then I'll be adding some green twine up at the top. Really easy, super easy, and really cute looking DIY carrot. Now, the only thing I'm not liking is that this burlap is kind of poor quality. I'm assuming it is from the dollar store, so that is probably why it's just kind of falling apart as I cut, like as I'm using it and working with it, it kind of falls apart. So it's I haven't had that happen too much before. I've had it happen a little bit, but this seems to be quite a lot. It was a new roll, so maybe it was just a bad batch. So as you can see, I wrapped the burlap around, and then I just went and I cut little strings and tie them together and hot glue them to the top. And then what I do is I like to always separate whether it's jute rope or twine, I like to separate the top. So it's really easy. If you take the top of your rope and you just kind of start pulling it apart, especially if you get like the right string, it pulls apart and then it looks like it's a lot more pieces than it is. And it just makes it a little bit easier than having to glue that many pieces, and then it looks like curly leaves. I'll show you what this looks like at the end, but for the next carrot, I am taking a piece of poster board. Now this is in between poster board and like Bristol board and poster board. It's a little bit softer than Bristol board, but a little bit harder than construction paper. So I do wind up kind of using a roll of paper towel cardboard in there as well, just to make it a bit harder. And I'm kind of making the shape of a carrot with this and just hot gluing it together. You could use white glue or Mod Podge. I just decided to use hot glue because I had it heated and I figured that would be the quickest. And I did the same thing. I wrapped the burlap around, covering mostly one side. I wasn't too concerned about covering the back of this. I did go with orange paper so that you wouldn't be able to see through it at the, in case I missed a spot, or in case the burlap was a little bit more see-through in one spot than was the other. And like I said, wasn't too concerned about doing all of the sides. I made sure just one side was really nice, like kind of the front and sides were really nice and the back was partially covered. And this was mostly because I was kind of running low on burlap and I still wanted to do a large carrot. If you had the burlap on hand, you could wrap it all around. It doesn't really matter. It's whatever you want. I use these in tray decor, so it'll be facing back anyway, so you won't be able to see the back. And I did the same strategy where I attached the green string up at the top and then I took little bits. Well, sorry, I didn't do green string this time. I did jute rope and then I separated it, so you'll see how that looks at the end. So here are both carrots all completed. For this DIY, what I did was I took some clothespins and I'm going to be making them into carrots. Now, I had made these when we went on our Disney cruise as a part of some sort of decor thing. I don't remember, but I participated in all of the fish extender groups and all of that stuff, so I think I was a part of something that I had made. I don't even remember anymore. But anyway, I made them like Mickey themed, but I wasn't using them for that now, so I took them apart and I hot glued them together so that they looked like they were in the shape of a carrot. So basically like flip them over. After I hot glued all of them together, I went ahead and I painted them out in this pumpkin orange acrylic paint. I painted almost the entire thing. I just left a little bit over on the top. So if you guys haven't been to my channel, my name is Vesna. This is my DIY channel. I actually have 3 channels altogether. I have a cooking channel and a home channel. On the cooking channel, fairly simple. I provide you guys with recipes that are usually family friendly, and on the home channel I display all of these DIYs that I made. So I'll be having a home tour video this weekend coming out. It'll be a spring home tour video, and then I will be doing an Easter home tour video. So if that's the kind of stuff you like, make sure you subscribe to those 2 channels. On my DIY channel, again, straightforward, I do DIYs, home decor DIYs. I do some renovations that I do over on the home channel, but for the DIY, I do trash or treasure, thrift flips, furniture flips, dollar store flips, all sorts of home decor items on a budget that I like to display in my house. Sometimes they're very much holiday themed, and other times they're just DIYs that you can have as decor in your home. So if that's the kind of stuff you like, make sure you subscribe to my DIY channel. It would be great if you could subscribe to all 3 and watch all 3. Hopefully you could get inspired. So if you have not subscribed, please hit that big subscribe button. Let me know that you did by leaving me a comment. Hit that big like button and also hit the notification bell so that you can see when I post new videos. Thank you. Once they were painted, I went ahead and I had bought this green twine from the Dollar Tree, so I just hot glued the tip of it to the top of the clothespin, and then I wrapped it around so that it looked like it was the top of a carrot. That's what I did with the first one. And then what I did was I put a few pieces together so that it looked like it was, you know, the leaves of the carrot at the top hanging off. And then for the next ones, I wound up kind of doing it the reverse way. I did the strings first, and then I did the ribbon or the twine around. Either way works. I just found this way to be a little bit easier, especially because I was making a few of them. So I actually created these for a few of my DIYs in this video, so it kind of goes together with a few projects. So here's what they look like on their own. So I will be using the carrots in this DIY, and what I'm doing for this one is I'm taking a piece of burlap, I would say about 6 inches of it, and I'm cutting it down, and I'm going to make 2 pieces of it, maybe a little bit less than 6 inches, maybe like 4 inches. And I'm going to be hot gluing it together. You can make this as big or as small as you want. And I hot glue it, and then I flip the sack inside out. And like I said, I'm making a little sack in here. And this is what's going to hold my carrots. The reason I'm flipping it inside out is because it'll make it look seamless. And then I also cut down the sides so that I can have the one end kind of flopped inside. Originally I was just going to write in carrots 5 cents on this, but I didn't like the way it looked on it, so then I wound up doing a little label for it, just using a piece of paper, and I'll show you how I did that. But before I show you that, I do go ahead and I stuff the little bag just with, I put a little bit of leftover jute twine and burlap and whatever, just little scrap pieces of that stuff in there, and then I flap over that top that I cut so that it covers it so you can't see, and then that's how my bag is stuffed. For the label, I'm just using a scrap piece of printer paper. Now I did buy the recycled printer paper, so it's a little bit more yellow than white, which is great for this project. I'm painting it over in the warm white acrylic paint from the Dollar Tree. It's more like an ivory white, kind of like an antique white. And I'm just giving it a nice good coat of it, and then I'll let it dry. And then instead of cutting it, what I do is I just rip it off so it looks, so the edges kind of look aged and frumpy. I do put my carrots in there, and then I'm just measuring out how big I need to rip it. So I just do that, and then I write in carrots 5 cents. I do it with a pencil first, and then I do it with a Sharpie, and I hot glue it to the little bag, and that's all there is to this one. So here's the bag all finished. Here I'm making another kind of picture frame. I found these little wood planks at Dollarama. They were only $1.25, so for a package of 4. And I also found these dowels, which were, I guess, a package of about 13, 14 in there. Those were a little bit more, but they're kind of like square dowels, which I thought was kind of neat. So I'm going to be using both, and I'm going to be making like just like a little picture frame. So I'm using the thinner dowels, and I'm just measuring out to see how big I need to cut them, and I am using just a power saw to cut these. So I cut them to what I need them, and then I go ahead and just kind of look to plan it out to make sure that they'll fit nice around it, and I go ahead and I stain them. For the stain, I am using the Rust-Oleum glaze in Java as my stain. I love using this for my stain. Once I stain them, I set them off to the side and I go ahead to work on my plank. I'm just using some leftover white paint. I think it was white with like a touch of pink in there, but very, very pale, not. It was just like a drop of pink because it was on the brush. And I'm just painting out the plank in that color. It didn't really matter that it had that little tint of pink because I go over it in black anyway. So originally I wanted it to look kind of like barn boards. So what I did was I drew in these lines and then I used my Sharpie, and that's where I made the mistake. It was too fake looking in my opinion, so I didn't like the way it looked. So I wound up trying to kind of tone it down with a little bit of brown. I still didn't like it, so I wound up painting it all in black. So I thought I was just going to distress it a little bit, but then I wound up just painting the whole thing in black to get rid of that Sharpie, and I actually like the way it looked this way better. So after I painted it in black, I went ahead and I just used an X-Acto knife to cut lines down the, just 2 lines in the plank to make it look a little bit like barn board. And then I went and I painted over top of it with that warm white that I was using in my previous projects. And I sanded everything down a little bit, and I just really wanted it to look a little bit aged and dinged up and had all sorts of colors coming through. So once I got the colors that I was looking for, I let that dry, and then I went and I hot glued my frame on to the little plank, and then I added some carrots that I also purchased from the Dollar Tree and wrote carrots 5 cents, and that's all there is to this one. For this next DIY, I'm taking some of those carrots that I had made, and I am just cutting them in half. I have these little miter shears, and I'm also then just cutting them on an angle, so you can just turn it to have any angle that you want. And so I'm just cutting them on an angle to make them look a little bit like a carrot, and then I'm going to be using them in the next DIY that I make. So I just wind up putting a little bit more orange onto them for the parts that kind of got chipped. And then the little parts that I cut off, I also make mini carrots out of those. And I just glue the green tops to them as well. So I just take a piece of string, I tie it together, and then I hot glue it to the top. So I got these little pieces of wood. They're like little square dowels from Dollarama. And they came in a package, I believe, of about 15. But they were all different widths. So I'm taking the thinner widths and I am cutting, these are 2. I'm cutting 2 of them in half to make a frame. Once I have them cut, I've hot glued them together to make a little frame. I then just paint them with that leftover white paint that I used for that previous project, just to have the frame be a little bit white and a little bit distressed. I just distressed the frame a little bit using some black acrylic paint together with that warm white, just to give it a bit of an antique look. And then I hot glue the carrots to it, and that's all there is to this DIY. I attached 2 pieces of string horizontally to the back of the frame with some hot glue, but then decided that I don't like the way that looks, so I just attached them vertically, but unfortunately my camera stopped recording, so I don't have that on camera, but I'll show you what it looks like finished with the carrots then glued to that clothesline. I'm going to be using this Happy Easter sign from the Dollar Tree, which I purchased for $1.25 because our Dollar Tree is $1.25 here. And I'm going to be using it to create a nice little hop sign. And what's great about this is I'm going to reuse the whole sign. I'm going to take it apart, but I'm going to reuse the whole sign so that way none of it will go to waste. I start with removing the staples from the back to get the little rope off. I thought I would keep the rope, but then I wound up cutting it after. It doesn't really matter how you take it out. I just decided to do it this way, thinking that I might even use the other side too for something. I didn't wind up using it, but you can take it out any way you want. I'm just taking it apart carefully, and then I'm going to be filling the holes all the holes at the front with some putty just so that they are covered. I'm going to be taking the nose off. I thought I would be able to leave the face as is, but when I took the nose off and the little bow, some of it peeled off, so I wound up painting it. I did remove the nose carefully because I wanted to be able to keep it, but even if I was careful, the glue was really stuck on there, so it did take off some of the paint, so I just wound up sanding it down and painting it white. You will most likely have to do that as well, unless you're lucky and it doesn't take not even the paint, it's whatever that paper is that's on there off. You want to make sure you sand it off because it'll smooth off wherever the paper came off, so it's somewhat even, and so it doesn't show too much when you paint it. And I'm just using the Rust-Oleum Chalk Linen White paint to paint over this bunny. Once I have this bunny painted, I go ahead and I paint the letters. I bought these wooden letters at the Dollar Tree. I bought an H and a P. However, I didn't actually buy an H. I bought an N, which we wound up cutting with my husband, and I wound up gluing it to make an H. So what he did was he cut off the middle part of the N, and then I just flipped the sides over because the way the N is. And he cut down the middle part to make it look like an H. I just measured out how big this P was, and that's what I did. And I just used some wood glue to glue it together. I did this because I could not find an H anywhere, so I wound up just doing it this way. And then I also painted out a paint stick, and I used one of the longer ones that I had from a project, and I painted it out white because that'll be the base for my hop. So here I just show you how I glued it, and this is what I mean by I flipped it over so that the top you would see the nice edges of the N, and then the bottom, as you can see, he just could not cut it for it to look this way, so I told him to just leave it and that I would cover the bottom so you wouldn't be able to see it. It's obviously better if you can find the H, but I went to two Dollar Trees and they did not have it, so I just improvised. I could have also used maybe like cardboard and just cut a few pieces and glued them together for the H and the P, but I decided to do it this way. So after I've painted and dried everything, I go ahead and I distress the sign, and I'm just using some black acrylic paint, and I'll just be putting a little bit on the brush and dabbing it off to give it that aged look. And as you can see, I did not paint the whole bunny sign really well. I left it kind of roughly painted, and that was because I was going to be distressing and just added to it. Now I did add a little bit of white into the black just so it wasn't such a strong black color, so it was a little bit lighter, maybe like a really dark gray. And then I just go ahead and I distress the sides and all over the bunny, as well as the letters and the base. I also distressed the carrots a little bit with that black just to have them kind of match the distressed look of the bunny. And I distressed the base, the paint stir stick as well. I start with attaching the nose because that's going to be my center, and from there I know where I need to draw the eyes and how big I need to make them, as well as the whiskers. I'm just using a black Sharpie to do this. If you are talented enough, you can use a brush. I'm not very good with the fine point brushes. Maybe I don't have good ones. They always kind of wind up looking a little bit sloppy. You could also use, if you want to cut out vinyl stickers, you could do that as well. But this was just as easy and it was very simple to do. Once I did my distressing, I attached the letters and the bunny. I attached the first letter so I could see where I wanted and how much room I needed for the bunny. And then I attached the second letter. Now the bunny was kind of falling down just on its own. So then I added these little cubes from the Dollar Tree on the back, and I did them quite high just so that the bunny would stick a little bit better. I did use a combination of wood glue and hot glue to attach the bunny, and then I just hot glued the carrots. But as you can see, when I flipped over, that's where I found out that I needed a bit more, and I just kind of made a base for the bunny at the bottom, and then I just built them up a little bit. And that helped the bunny stay. If you're finding that this isn't working, what you could do, so because you can see I played around with it quite a bit, what you could do is build out that bottom part with 2 tumble block pieces of wood and just glue those on and have the bunny stick to that, and then that way it's sticking to a flat surface rather than the round trying to stick to the base. But I didn't have any tumble blocks, so this is what I did. And like I said, once I played around with it a bit and built it up a bit more, it did wind up sticking. And that's all there is to this DIY. It cost around $3, very inexpensive, and I think it looks really cute. And it's something that you could find at like a Winners or a Marshall's for sure. That would be definitely a lot more than $3. So here it is. I absolutely love the way it turned out. Let me know what you think. So this next DIY is another simple DIY. It is a Dollar Tree DIY. So I'm using these jumbo craft sticks as well as the bunny form, all from the Dollar Tree. The bunny form came in a pack of 8, 9, I believe, a big pack of them. And the jumbo craft sticks come in a pack of 20, I think, or 18. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making kind of like a little sign from this. So I'm using 2, 4, 6, I believe, 6 craft sticks, one over top of the other, and then another 2 on the sides. And I will be hot gluing everything together, and then I'm going to be staining it using my Rust-Oleum decorative glaze in Java. I will just clarify, I added one more jumbo craft stick, and I'm going to be using 7 craft sticks plus the 2 on the side, so 9 altogether. And I will be staining everything, and then I'll be painting everything. Now, I wanted the front to have the little sticks on the side, so I just went to make it a little bit stronger. I put some popsicle sticks on the back just to kind of reinforce the little sign. And then I'm going to be covering the bunny in this buffalo check in black and white, this checker pattern in black and white. I got this at the Dollar Tree as well. I got it around Christmas time. I don't know if they have it all year long, but I picked it up then. And I'm just going to be Mod Podging him in this fabric. So what I'm going to do is just cut out a piece as close to what I need as I can, and then I'll Mod Podge it and just kind of glue the excess on the back and cut it out as close as I can to the edge. So I put Mod Podge on the bottom of the fabric and on top of the fabric once I've put it on the wood, so like on the bottom of the wood, and then I put it on top of the fabric. So just make sure you let this dry off before you try to work with it, because sometimes it gets a little bit sticky. So then I go ahead and I paint over top of the sides. I just want it to look like it's framed in this little picture. So I add some white paint, but I'm putting the white paint in a container that had black paint in it, so it's not completely white. It'll give it that little grayish white color, and because I'm painting over top of the brown, it just gives a really kind of rustic feel. And I've also attached some jute rope at the top just with some glue, hot glue just in the back at the top, so that if you wanted to hang this, you could. If you just want it as a decoration, you could. I will most likely be using this in my tray. So you could leave the sides as is with the white grayish paint, but I decided that I want this to look like it's truly framed in, so I wound up adding another 2 craft sticks, so you actually need 11 on top, and doing the same thing, stain and paint, as I did with the other one. I just think it gives it a little bit more of a complete look, but you could do it either way. I then just make a little burlap bow out of burlap ribbon that has, the adhesive burlap ribbon. I'm using this because it was the thinness that I wanted, I guess, and I thought it would stick, but doesn't stick the best, so even if you use regular burlap it would be fine. And I just make a tiny little bow at the top, and I add some greenery to it just to give it a little bit of more of a spring touch. And the greenery that I'm adding, I don't know what it's called. It's from the Dollar Tree. It comes in like a little bunch, like a little pick. I also add some of that checkered fabric into it too, to make it look like it's like a true bow with dimension. So I still wanted to add a little bit more detail to the bunny, so I add like a little bow to the bunny. The bow is made out of twine, and I just kind of wrap some twine around in a loop and twist it to make it look like a bow, and I hot glue it to the bunny's, like around the bunny's neck, so it looks like the bunny's wearing a little bow. So here is the finished piece. Let me know what you think of him. I'm using some more scrap wood. I just have these little, if you've watched my videos before, you saw that my husband brought me back these little small planks of wood that came in some sort of packaging that they were throwing out at his work. So I just cut one little leftover piece in half, and I am painting it out in a mixture of this cashmere tan acrylic paint, which I've put into that little container where I had the black paint, so it kind of gives a little bit of a darker brown paint. And I wanted to show you this because I'm using it kind of like a stain. So I'm putting it on, I put it on liberally, and then I'm taking a wet wipe and I'm just wiping it off so it looks like it's staining the wood in this light brown color. I'm using these bunnies again, and I am just taking a piece of shelf liner, and I am covering them in this, I'm covering the bunny in this shelf liner, cutting it as close as I can to the actual bunny so it takes its shape. And that's all there is to it. I've chosen this diamond pattern teal and white shelf liner because I think it's a very nice Easter color. And then I'm also doing it in one of these floral black and white shelf liners. These are all shelf liners that I had left over from other projects, so I didn't have to purchase them. And I'm just gonna hot glue the bunny down, and I'll wrap each piece of wood, one at the top, one at the bottom, in twine. And again, that's all there is to these projects really easy. It cost me, well, under $1 really, because these wood bunnies come in a pack for $1.25, and the twine comes in a big roll, and I only used a little bit, and the shelf liner I had on hand. So after I get everything glued on, I just want to make it a little bit lighter and look a little bit more distressed. So I add some of the warm white acrylic paint onto the wood plank as well, just to give it a little bit more color. And I do the same for the other piece. I think I had said that the other piece was going to be the black and white shelf liner, but it's black and white floral scrapbook paper. But they do have shelf liner like this as well. I just didn't have any on hand. And I wanted this color, so I'm just Mod Podging this one to the bunny, same way I did in the previous project, and then cutting it to size. So here they are all finished. I think these ones are really cute too. Again, you can use them anywhere. I will likely be using them in my tier tray decor. And I just love the way they turned out. Let me know what you think.
Thank you so much for making it to the end. Woohoo! Hopefully you enjoyed it and inspired you. If not for this year, if you celebrate Easter later, then for next year for sure. If you're celebrating right now, happy Easter. Thank you so much for watching and stay safe.